Hi students, welcome to lesson number 50, Nehru and Patel, Ethics and Integrity. After completion of this lesson, you will be able to understand life and events of Jawaharlal Nehru, Nehru's major works, Nehru on civil service and administration, supporter of socialist ideas, Nehru's belief in planning, democracy and decentralization according to Nehru, Nehru as promoter of the public sector, Nehru's contribution to the study of public administration, critical evaluation of Nehru, life and events of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, integration of princely states, All India services. Jawaharlal Nehru is among the few Indian thinkers and writers who have contributed to the progression of public administration in India. Nehru is regarded as the architect and builder of modern India. He was gone down in history as an outstanding statesman and political leader who devoted his life of passionate quest and gigantic endeavors to national development. He is considered a multifaceted personality, a statesman with an instinct of democratic fusion and socialism, a charismatic leader with an international outlook of amity and friendship, a writer with a distinct vision, and an apostle of peace and secularism, a thinker about contemporary events, Chacha Nehru of children and leader of masses. Born in a rich family in the year 1889, Jawaharlal Nehru studied both in India and England. For some time, he practiced law but left it to join Gandhiji in his struggle against British rule in India. Immediately after India's independence, Jawaharlal Nehru directed the country's destiny as the first Prime Minister of the largest democratic republic. In his speeches, writings and notings, he left an enduring mark as a profound thinker about contemporary events. The impact of his ideas and concepts has been felt in all aspects of life of the day. Nehru's major works: Soviet Russia, The Glimpses of World History, The Discovery of India, India and the World, Autobiography, Towards Freedom, The Unity of India, Independence and After, Bunch of Old Letters, and India's Foreign Policy. In addition, his views on administration and the addresses he gave as the President of the Indian Institute of Public Administration have been published in a publication titled Jawaharlal Nehru and Public Administration with a publishing IIPA 1975. Nehru had perceptible views about the nature of British administration in India. In his autobiography, he made references to the working style of ICS, that is Indian Civil Services, while conceding that there were individual officers in the services who were both hard-working and work-oriented. Nehru pointed out that the services as a whole were kept services, analogous to Veblen's concept of kept classes. Nehru writes, "Of one thing I am quite sure, that no new order can be built up in India so long as the spirit of the ICS pervades our administration and our public services." He says, "The new India must be served by earnest, efficient workers." In The Discovery of India, he reiterated his earlier views. Nehru wrote, that these permanent services were totally incapable of leading India in any progressive direction. The very qualities they possessed made them unhelpful, for the qualities necessary in police state are utterly different from those required in progressive democratic community. His conclusion was that outside the narrow sphere of work to which they had been accustomed, they were helpless and incompetent. After the transfer of power, Nehru's views about the nature of civil services underwent a slight change. In 1953, for example, he pointed out that in the British period, India was a state in which the services played a predominant part and where their interests were specially safeguarded. Nehru was against the feeling of casteism in the services and wanted it to go. He insisted on maintaining standards in the work. He points out that in case of an individual's inefficiency or dishonesty, one should not blame the whole service or the whole community and say that it is bad because one individual or 2 or 10 are bad. We should deal with individuals. For the rest, it becomes the duty of every person for his own sake, for the sake of the service, and if you like, for the sake of the country, to maintain certain high standards of work, efficiency, probity and integrity. Thereby, ultimately, he gains too as well as others. Dealing with the problem of inefficiency, Nehru contended that somewhere it must be found to make it possible for the efficient and bright man to advance and inefficient to be weeded out. Consideration of seniority is desirable to some extent, but it is not wholly desirable because it was regarded only to the length of service or age to the determinant of efficiency. Old minds may be good, but they are still old and they cannot bring a new outlook to the manifold new task. He wanted that administration to develop the capacity to move with those millions in a dynamic society where you have to move and move along with masses of people. It is very important to have the human approach. He says that the most competent of administrators may be a flop if he has not got that human approach today. Very good administrators just cannot get on because they do not have that human touch. Nehru was convinced that India could attain economic prosperity also on the basis of socialism. He was committed to the philosophy of socialism, but his concept of socialism was quite different from the one defined by Marx and other political theorists. He says, so long as private monopolies remain, it is not possible for any socialist structure of society to develop. It becomes essential, therefore, for society to control the major means of production and to prevent each monopoly from developing. Long before India's independence, Nehru, in his presidential address at the Lahore session of the Indian National Congress in 1929, declared that he was a socialist and a republican and did not believe in feudal aristocracy. At the same time, his ideal of socialism implied individual freedom also. I do not see why under socialism that should not be a great deal of freedom for the individual, indeed for greater freedom than the present system gives. He can have freedom of conscience and mind, freedom of enterprise and even the possession of the private property on restricted scale. Nehru initiated the thinking on planning in India in the year 1938 as chairman of the National Planning Committee of the Indian National Congress. Nehru's concept of central planning and setting up of a national planning commission for raising living standards of the Indian masses had a great impact on Indian administration. For Nehru, planning meant mobilization of human and material resources for the improvement of the social and economic state of the country. Nehru attached considerable importance to planning. He says, "It would be a pity if we had to put an end to that 5-year plan, because putting end to it means weakening ourselves for the future." The strides that India has taken in the fields of industry, technology and agriculture testify to the vision and sagacity of Nehru. The socio-economic planning initiated by Nehru was a sine qua non in our war against poverty, economic backwardness, population explosion, and provided the infrastructure for building up a socialist society. Nehru's approach to the functional organization of the Planning Commission was quite different from the traditional concept of the department. He was thinking of that commission as a body of enthusiastic young men drawn mainly from outside the normal administrative services and working in a manner quite unlike that of the normal secretariat department. Nehru's visit to Soviet Union in the year 1927 was a landmark in the formation of his philosophical and political views. He turned decisively to democratism and became an ardent supporter of socialist convictions. He was a driving force behind the community development and Panchayat Raj programs. He believes that these could help in bringing administration nearer to the people. These were the media through which every active member of the public could be drawn to do something or other in some form or the other for the good of the community. He wanted to strengthen these institutions by giving them real powers. He was of the view that the official's role vis-a-vis these institutions should be advisory in nature. He felt that the panchas and sarpanchas should be given greatest latitude to the extent of committing mistakes, because he thought that such mistakes would help them learn and take care of their immediate and day-to-day problems. He rightly said, "The mistakes of panchayats will not endanger the security of the country." To Nehru, the Panch is also an administrator. In the field of defining policies, Nehru's role has been overwhelming. He was the only begetter of the industrial policy resolutions of 1948 and 1956, of the concept of the public sector and of the policy towards science, and in particular atomic energy. Nehru, as the first Prime Minister of India, laid the foundation for the rapid industrialization of the country, and it was due to his vision and efforts that today India is regarded as one of the few technologically advanced nations of the world. Under Nehru's stewardship, the public sector acquired a commanding height in the Indian economy. He attached importance to the role of the private sector. He was of the clear view that the distinction between the public and private sectors was one of the relative emphasis. The private and the public sectors cannot be looked upon as anything like separate entities. They are and must function as part of a single organism. Nehru advocated that sufficient autonomy should be given to public enterprises. He was against the use of the bureaucratic style of management for these enterprises. Nehru also opposed rigid parliamentary control over them. He was key to securing a proper balance between parliamentary control and autonomy of the public enterprises. He is credited for the setting up of the structure of implementing certain policies and the choice of personnel to man the structure. In setting up the Autonomous Atomic Energy Commission under the leadership of the renowned scientist Dr. Homi Bhabha, Nehru evolved the right organization. Likewise, he chose Professor Mahalanobis for directing the nation's highest statistical institute, namely Indian Statistical Institute located at Kolkata. These organizations and many more such were given autonomy with the government new patterns of organizations which owe their emergence to Nehru's thinking. Apart from the laying down of certain policies for the development of the country and the structures for implementing them, Nehru's contribution to the study and application of the science of administration is overwhelming. He had a great interest in bringing about administrative reforms in the country. The Indian Institute of Public Administration, located at New Delhi, with which he was associated since its inception as its president, is a shining example of his interest in the improvement and development of the administration in the country. Nehru's presidential address at its annual conference reflects his ideas and concepts of administration. Many of administrative changes such as organization and methods, operations research, and the introduction of modern techniques of management with their birth to his support. His support and contribution to the spread of the gospel of efficiency are very substantial. Nehru attempted to lay down the country's basic policies, the structures for implementing them, and the principles of administration. He was also unable to carry out the basic changes in the system of administration, which he thought essential for the post-independent democratic government. The Nehru government not only maintained the privileges of the imperial services, but even guaranteed them with a constitutional provision through, as he himself admitted, they hardly fit into a democratic structure, and they produce that sense of class division which is the base of all our social structure. Despite commanding Appleby's recommendations for changes in India's administrative system, Nehru was not able to do much to bring about a change. The new service structure which was brought into existence continues to reflect the same colonial type of rigid class divisions in the civil service structure. Now let us have a look at Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. The problem of the states is so difficult that you alone can solve it, said the father of the nation Mahatma Gandhi to Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. The Congress has assigned the problem of the states to the pragmatic administrator Vallabhbhai Patel. Sardar Patel entered the Indian political scenario from 1917 to 1950 and gave himself to the struggle for freedom and reorganized the Indian National Congress. Patel was a superb organizer and strategist who played a major role in making Congress a national party. In the Indian cabinet, he was second only to Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. After independence, he managed sensitive portfolios like Ministry of Home. Following the partition, he played a crucial role in the restructuring of the bureaucracy and integrating the princely states. Patel was an important member in the drafting of the Indian Constitution, and being in this position, he laid the foundation of political democracy in the country. Thus, he emerged as an ingenious leader and a judicious statesman, acknowledged as the Iron Man and a founder of modern India. Integration of princely states. The integration of princely states, more than 500, into the Union of India could be possible only under the statesmanship and administrative skills of Patel. Under the Mountbatten Plan, 1946, princely states were left free to decide their destiny either by joining Dominion of India, Dominion of Pakistan, or remain independent from these dominions. In order to build a strong and unified India, Patel used every possible way. In July 1947, Sardar Patel organized the States Department, and his immediate objective is to secure the annexation of princely states, and invited the cooperation of the rulers. He also pleaded that the people of the princely state and provinces are closely linked, that no one can divide them into fragments. In his opinion, a responsible government should replace an autocratic government. Sardar Patel also appealed to the rulers of the princely states to join the hand and show their true patriotism towards a united India. He also introduced the concept of privy purses as a payment to be made to the families of the princes for their agreement to integrate with India. The double argument of patriotism and self-interest, they have accepted to join the Dominion of India, and hence by voluntary surrender of their rights, the princely states agrees to authorize the central government to exercise the rights of superintendent and control. With this, the map of India changed completely. Whereas the princely state of Hyderabad was annexed by the police action and Junagadh was annexed by the plebiscite. Now let us have a look at All India services. All India services are those which are common to both central and state governments. The history of All India services dates back to the British era, when initially civil servants were appointed by the Court of Directors of British East India Company. The service in those times was divided into covenanted and uncovenanted civil service, where the former was reserved exclusively for the members of England. With time, they came to be known as Indian Civil Service. An appointment to the civil service of the company will not be a matter of favour, but a matter of right. He who obtains such an appointment will owe it solely to his own abilities and industry. It is undoubtedly desirable that the civil servants of the company should have received the best, the most finished education that the native country affords. Macleay Committee report. In the year 1854, All India Services was established on the recommendation of the Macleay Committee. In the year 1854, and gradually it became the instrument for suppressing Indians and helped the Britishers to rule India efficiently. Before independence, Patel was a huge critic of the colonial bureaucracy. He said it would be necessary that when India becomes independent, a heavy reduction in the civil service will be made, and subsequently there will be a reduction in the civil services. But with independence, he realized the importance of civil services and became strong supporter of the bureaucracy. Sardar Patel was the chief protagonist of All India Services in the Constituent Assembly. Hence, he came to be regarded as the father of All India Services. In his own words, Patel said, "I wish to assure you that I have worked with them during this difficult period. I am speaking with a sense of heavy responsibility, and I must confess that in point of patriotism, in point of loyalty, in point of sincerity, and in point of ability, you cannot have a substitute. I wish to place it on record in this house that if during the last 2 or 3 years most of the members of services had not behaved patriotically and with loyalty, the Union would have collapsed. He further observed, "The Union will go. You will not have a united India if you do not have a good All India service that has the independence to speak out its mind. This constitution is meant to be worked by a ring of service that will keep the country intact." And hence, Patel described the civil service as a steel frame of India, and is convinced that administrative unity is vital for a unified India. He further said that in the point of patriotism, loyalty, sincerity and capacity, we don't have any substitute, and if Indian become member of the All India services, then there is no point of discussing its menaces. Hence, in the conference held on 21st October 1946, he introduced a plan for the resurrection of All India services. He also discussed the advantages of All India services for centre and provinces both. The first advantage is being facilitate the relations between the centre and provinces, ensure certain uniformity, keep the central administration in touch with the ground level reality, ensure to achieve a higher level of goals, free from communal and party bars. He summed up his discussion and ensures the general consensus in the favor of the All India administrative services. They must not take part in politics. They must not involve themselves in communal activities. Nehru and Patel both called for unity and forgiveness. Nehru's thinking and personal dedication and the goals he held supreme will remain a source of strength and inspiration in building a better India. Like other great thinkers, his ideas and concepts have made an abiding impact on the Indian administration. He was the great and one of the most educated political leaders of India, who laid the social, economic and political administrative foundation of independence India. Without the wise and sure guiding hand of Patel, Nehru might not have supervised the prince's extinction with such patience and foresight. After Mahatma's demise, the joint effort of Jawaharlal Nehru and Vallabhbhai Patel have guided the fragile nation on the path that it is now. Thank you.